Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to look at some recent sales on eBay for mint on card vintage Star Wars action figures. And we're going to start off with a few early 12 backs that sold from random sellers. And I thought it would be kind of fun to again look at Hake's data to compare how those prices on eBay compare to the past Hake's sales, not only recently, but during the heyday. And there's even one on Hake's that I found that's actually still underway with bidding. So at least I can give you some guidance on where that one might end up. And then we also do have some later stuff like some droids mint on cards, but there were some good deals in this batch of items. So prices seem to have somewhat stabilized for mid-tier kind of items, AFA 80s. Obviously, the high-grade stuff still commands big-time prices. And to show that, we're going to start off with one from Wheeljack's Lab that was at auction. And that is an SKU on the figure stand, 12-back A R2-D2 AFA 85, straight 85 subscores. That's a very high-grade item and not typical of something that you would see on eBay in an auction, no less. And it was a punched example, no price sticker, and it ended at $52.19. And I didn't really have a good sense of where the value was on this. I always felt like R2-D2 with the SKU on the figure stand is maybe a little tougher to find, and it seems like that bears true given that sales price of $52.19. So what I did was, for some of these early card backs, I went back through Hake's closed data just to get a sense of how those prices compare. And if you look at this one sold for $6,046 after the buyer's premium, also an AFA 85 SKU on the figure stand, straight 85. So pretty direct comparable. It was also punched with the price sticker. Now, this one closed in November of 2022, which that was the height of post-COVID mania in terms of prices. It was not long after this, kind of, on the back end of this, where we started to see the sales cycle peak and start to come down. In November, that fall, I specifically remember that fall, a lot of the prices for high-grade items at Hake's and even on eBay, they had kind of reached their peak. And it was kind of after the new year where we started to see prices start to return to normal, if you will. So anyway, this one sold for $60.46, admittedly during better market conditions. And then this one sold in March of 2023 for $17,700. Now, I have no idea why this one sold as high as it did, because this one was not even an SKU on the figure stand. And it was an 85 grade. It was punched with no price sticker like the one that sold on eBay. It was just a standard Hong Kong, nothing crazy about it. But March 22 of 2023 was kind of post-market peaks. Maybe not. I mean, maybe we still saw some high stuff in 2023. I know, the comic market settled around this time period, but, this was the height of insanity, I guess, into early 2023. And this sales price, I mean, it's crazy just to think about how crazy that market was during the kind of late 2022, I guess, into 2023, based on this sales price of $17,700. And again, this was not an SKU on the figure stand. This was just a 12-back A. Pretty wild to see those price differences. And this is literally only 2 months, 2 months difference, right? Or, well, let's call it 4 months difference. November 16th, 2022 to March 22nd of 2023, not even a 12A SKU. And it's just crazy what the prices did. So this one feels to me, a little bit like what it probably should have sold for, just given that during better market conditions, it was going for, let's call that about $800 more. But I'm not trying to say there aren't new high prices being set now, right? That's clearly the case with the Jeff Jacobs collection. And even on like Comic Link, I'm seeing some, I have a newsstand Hulk 340 CGC 98, and I thought I overpaid for it at the time. And this was probably 2 years ago when I bought it, and at least. And I think I paid $3,800 for it. And I was like, God, why am I doing this? This is so stupid. Well, lo and behold, one literally just sold last week on Comic Link for almost $6,000. So, and it's my book is super clean like this one that just sold. So I don't get it, man. You just can't predict what's going to happen in the market. And, going back to that Hake 340, if you look at the Go Collect data, it says it's worth anywhere from $2,800 to $3,500. Which is where I've been seeing it. Yet on Comic Link, one sold for $6,000 or close to it. So there's going to be outliers here and there, but it is interesting to compare some of these old peak prices versus what we're seeing today. All right, so 12A Ben Kenobi SKU on the figure stand, AFA 80, that sold for $19.50. The SKU on the figure stand for Kenobi is a fairly easy one to find. I found a lot of data points on Hake's. And this one sold in July of 2022. The value code on this one was $5,000 to $10,000. So that shows you how crazy the market was during that time period and where Hake's expected it to go. Yet it sold at $2,855. And that's, I think at the time would probably a disappointing sale just given that time frame. But it was also a punched example like this one, AFA 80 plus. And again, $19.50 for this one. During really nice market conditions, it sold for almost $1,000 more. Here was another one that was an AFA 85, so admittedly higher grade, unpunched with the price sticker, $27.67. So $28.55 for the 80 plus, and then March of 2024, where the market has now, in theory, corrected. This one sold for $27.67. This 75 grade, this was a 75 grade in June of 2022. That one sold for $34.26. And that was, I think we had a video that I put out where saying this is the peak. We saw a rocket firing FET sell in this particular auction for like, $200,000 or whatever the number was. So that's a big number for a 75 grade relative to this one that sold just, let's see, this one was June 2022. And so this one was an 80 plus grade that sold literally a month later. And it sold for, let's call that $700 less, $600 to $700 less. So it corrected pretty quickly, really. And admittedly, this was punched with no price sticker. The other one was unpunched with a price sticker. So it's not always going to be apples to apples, but it is pretty crazy just to see some of the price differences with even a month of each other. This one was actually punched as well, 75 grade, and then that one that's 27.67 in March versus some of these crazy prices that were lower grade. Unbelievable. All right. So anyway, back to the eBay sales, and we can compare now this one to one that's actually for sale in bidding right now on Hake's. And this is a 12A Darth Vader 12-back CAS 80 plus punched example that closed at 2025. Now there is one underway right now, and this video will air before this auction closes for sure. But they got the value code at 2,000 to 5,000. And this one is a CAS 85. So it's a little higher grade. This one was an 80 plus. This one's also unpunched versus this one that just sold that was punched. So I'm assuming that it's going to go in that 2,500 plus range, I would think, just given that it's unpunched, no price sticker, slightly higher grade, and we've got this data point at 2025. So I'm going to go out and say it's going to go for 2,500, somewhere in that ballpark. There is also a closed data point I found. That now this one was a 12-back A punched example that was an AFA 80. CAS 80 plus, AFA 80, I don't know. But this was from the Jeff Jacobs collection, and that one closed January of 2025 for $29.50. So again, AFA 80 versus this one that was a CAS 80 plus. Yes, there's a premium, fair or not. I know that it's not always fair, and you guys don't always agree with that. But fair or not, the AFA items are going to get higher grades. That's just been proven enough that I don't think I am saying anything particularly controversial there. I don't make the rules. I'm just giving you what the data shows. The data shows that in general, AFA items tend to command a higher price. Now, an AFA 80, is that the same as a CAS 80 plus? You could make an argument, yeah. But 2950 just 9 months ago, and then this one sold for 2025. So pretty good deal, I think, overall, is what I'm trying to get at. Is that given that data point from the Jeff Jacobs sale, this feels like a pretty good deal. And, you know, I think as part of the Jeff Jacobs collection, people want a piece of that collection for their collection. It's certainly going to go down as probably the greatest single collection ever. So people may pay a little bit of a premium for it. So I get that as well. And I'm not disparaging that by any means. It is pretty cool to have a piece of that collection. Here is an AFA 80 12-back A Stormtrooper. Now, again, punched example, very nice looking Stormtrooper. The actual figure itself looks every bit of an 80. Surprised it's not an 85 just based on that one look there. I guess it's got a little discoloration to the legs, but I don't know. That's being pretty picky. That's a pretty nice looking figure. 1708.98 was the final sales price there. And then the most comparable that I found was an unpunched example, AFA 80. Now, this one did have a 75 subscore for the blister, and that sold at 1661, but it just closed a month ago in September, a month and a half ago by the time this video airs. So 1661, this one sold for 1708. It had a better subscores, 80 subscore for the blister versus the 75. Worth every penny, in my opinion, based on that most recent data point from Hake's. So good deal there, fair deal there. Some other items that sold maybe a little more budget friendly. This was a yellowed blister 77 back A Biker Scout unpunched. That sold for $131.50. Pretty decent deal. It wasn't perfect, but pretty nice deal in my opinion. This Leia was a pretty strong sale, 77 back. I guess it's a little bit yellowed. It's it's just minor yellowing. You can kind of see it on the blister itself, the bubble portion. That one sold for $352 though, which is a pretty healthy number, really. But I get it because the blister is on the clear side of yellow. It's very faintly yellow though. You can also see what's interesting is if you look at the helmet there, it's like it's got a piece of tape. I don't know if that's going around it or what there, or if that's behind the helmet to kind of keep it from sticking to the cardboard. But that's something I've never really noticed before. I'm sure I've seen examples like that, but I've just have never kind of noticed it personally. But you can see a little piece of Scotch tape in there that I can't tell if that's going around. It looks like to me like it's going behind the helmet, and it's almost like it's kind of like how you see those little plastic dividers for vinyl cape figures like Ben Kenobi, Lando, or Darth Vader, or I guess maybe the Jawa. I don't know if the Jawas had those, but I know the Vaders and Lando would often have those little, clear, transparent pieces of plastic to protect the vinyl from reacting with the cardboard. So I don't know if that's what they're doing with that tape there for the helmet or what, but just an interesting thing that I had never personally noticed before. $352 though, big number. This was, I thought, a really good deal. Toy Scout had an AFA 85 grade Collector Series Land Speeder. That sold for $910, which I thought was a pretty decent deal, really. It's a red label, factory sealed example. And, the last AFA 85 I saw for the Collector Series Land Speeder that sold was over 1,000, if memory serves. So pretty nice deal there at $910 there. Some other ESB cards that sold. This was a 41 back D Han Bespin, slightly yellowed blister, ungraded. That one sold for $325, best offer accepted. I got so excited with my Hake's data, I forgot to look up what this actually sold for, but $325, best offer accepted there. This Leia 41D, Leia Hoth, was a relist, I guess because the original buyer never paid. The first time this one sold, it sold for $823. Second time around, it sold for $756. So it's still a very healthy number. And that's a really clean example. Every bit of an AFA 80. Just some light edge wear to the card, but beautiful blister on that one especially. So $756 the second go around. And then going back to our friend JFK Solver, he had a number of beautiful high-grade items that sold at auction that I thought were all really good deals. This was an AFA 80 plus Luke Stormtrooper on the Power of the Force card. Unpunched, no price sticker for $14.77. That feels at least $200 or $300 below what I would have expected for it. So very good deal there. And then he had some awesome droids figures that I would argue all three of them went below fair market value, particularly the Tig From. This was an AFA 80 and unpunched, no price sticker for $756. I mean, I've seen loose complete Tig Froms go for $600. So to get a mint on card for $756 feels like borderline robbery. I know that LCG Auctions had one same grade that sold for like $660, but that was a particularly low price. But this one, I thought, for given that it was on eBay, I mean, I'm really shocked that that one went as low as it did. And then we had the C-3PO that sold for $820. That was an AFA 80 unpunched, no price sticker, a very good deal there. And then the R2-D2 pop-up lightsaber was also an a CAS 80. 80, 85, 80 were the sub-scores on that one. Again, unpunched, no price sticker for $943. Those are all three of those droids mint on cards were very, very good deals. And I thought, maybe 10 or 20%, depending on the figure, but at least I'd say 10% below fair market value. So I think really good deals on all three of those. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.